Welcome to The Explainer. I'm incredibly excited to dive right into today's topic because we're looking at something that fundamentally challenges how we understand our own minds. In today's Explainer, we're focusing on Satya Prakash Dubey's Consciousness Intelligence Awareness, or CIA framework. We're going to unpack this highly structured, mathematical, and neuroregulatory approach that attempts to resolve one of the absolute greatest mysteries in science. And we're zooming in on one very bold claim in particular, the idea that consciousness is, strictly speaking, just a detector.
I want you to really think about this for a second. Why does a physical brain actually feel anything at all? We know that when you look at a stop sign or, say, stub your toe, physical neurons are firing away inside your head. But why is that physical firing accompanied by the vivid, undeniable felt experience of seeing the color red or feeling that sharp sting? I mean, why aren't we just organic robots processing data in the dark?
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for unpacking this mystery. We'll hit the explanatory gap, check out the CIA framework, look at the ultimate detector, and finish up with unifying the mind. Section 1. The explanatory gap. Look, modern neuroscience is genuinely incredible at mapping brain states. It can tell you exactly which regions light up when you hear a bell ring. But it hits this massive wall known as the explanatory gap. This is basically the structural inability of science to explain why any specific pattern of physical neural firing equals a felt quality. Now, there are other major theories out there, like integrated information theory, and they map out computational structures beautifully. But according to the source material, they completely fail to explain why integration as such is actually felt from the inside. They give us the structure of the data, sure, but entirely miss the feeling of the data. Section 2. The CIA framework. To solve this explanatory gap, the author introduces a massive paradigm shift. Basically, we have to stop treating the mind as just one single undifferentiated blob. Instead, the framework breaks it down into three distinct co-arising primitives, each with a strictly bounded job. First up is consciousness. In this model, its only job is to detect felt experience. Second is intelligence. Think of this as your biological computer. It manifests and computes structure. So that's your perception, your memory, your behavior. And third is awareness. This is the organizer that binds that detection and that computation together into one situated point of view. Separating these three is the foundational structural move of the entire theory. As the source material explicitly states, keeping those three jobs conceptually separate is what allows the hard problem to be given a precise, structural answer rather than an evasive one. By not forcing one single concept of mind to simultaneously explain a computational memory retrieval and the felt pain of a paper cut, we can actually start to solve the hard problem of consciousness. Section 3. The ultimate detector.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we're going to intensely focus on next. Exactly what this framework defines as consciousness, because it's probably very different from how you use the word in everyday life. The concept is perfectly illustrated by an everyday analogy. On side A, think of an oscilloscope reading a radio wave. It displays the physical electrical waveform perfectly, but it's entirely blind to the music itself, because it simply isn't built to detect music. Then, on side B, think of a listener. The listener is tuned directly to the experiential register, detecting the music. Under the CIA framework, your physical brain is the speaker system processing the wave, and your consciousness is the listening.
The absolute golden rule here is that consciousness does not decode. It only detects. It is strictly a non-transformational detector. It doesn't compute data, it doesn't translate languages, and it certainly doesn't plan your route home. All of that decoding and representation, that is entirely the job of intelligence. Consciousness is simply the substrate that lights up with feeling. And the author actually grounds this in formal mathematics with master equation 1, known as the detection equation. This formally defines the consciousness operator as projecting the total system state exclusively onto the experiential register. What this means in plain terms is that the physical state and the experiential state exist together, but they are mathematically orthogonal to each other. Because they are completely separate registers, a physical brain scanner reading the physical register will never ever be able to take a picture of a feeling. The instrument will always return a value of exactly 0 for the experiential side. To prove this isn't just abstract math on a whiteboard, the framework grounds this in clinical reality, showing how detection and computation can actually decouple in humans. Take a look at side A, blind sight or automatic driving on a familiar route. In these cases, intelligence computes incredibly complex, visually guided behavior without the subject having any experiential visual detection. The body drives the car, but the felt presence is absent. Conversely, look at side B, locked-in syndrome. Here, consciousness perfectly detects internal experience, but there's a near total loss of motor intelligence output. So the detector is fully on, but the manifester is broken.
Section 4. Unifying the mind.
So the crucial point is that for a human being to function in everyday life, these distinctly separate operations, detecting and manifesting, must somehow be tied back together to create a complete biological organism. Here is the unified table of the mind. You've got consciousness, which only detects experiential value. You have intelligence, which manifests structure, computation, and behavior. And finally, you have awareness. Awareness is the critical operator that binds the detection and the manifestation together. Without awareness, the whole system falls apart, which is exactly what happens during deep, dreamless sleep or general anesthesia.
Now, what happens when this beautifully unified system gets cluttered? Well, the framework proposes that the human nervous system is naturally an evolutionary bliss-generating system. However, our intelligence often constructs an artificial self-model based on psychological needs and social conditioning. This false self-model is systematically inaccurate compared to our actual biology, which generates a persistent prediction error. That error requires chronic, metabolically expensive suppression, which we consciously experience as friction, anxiety, or suffering. Biological well-being is achieved by dropping this artificial model and returning the nervous system to what the author calls natural cognitive order.
And this leads us to one of the most powerful takeaways from this whole explainer. Well-being is released, not manufactured. Getting back to natural cognitive order isn't about forcefully building happiness or putting a ton of effort into positive thinking. It is simply about withdrawing the top-down predictive load of that false artificial self-model, allowing your nervous system to effortlessly rest in its default lowest friction state. Just like an unobstructed circulatory system produces smooth blood flow without you having to consciously command it to do so.
Which leaves us with a genuinely fascinating final question. If consciousness is purely a detector and intelligence is purely computation, could we one day build a machine that truly feels? The framework actually proposes the CIA Artificial Awareness Test to look for the specific mathematical binding signatures of awareness in AI, rather than just measuring how smart they act. If we completely separate computation from actual feeling, are we closer to answering whether artificial systems are experiencing anything at all? It's a profound thought to leave you with, and it completely reframes how we look at both our own minds and the future of artificial intelligence. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks some deep structural curiosity for you today.